Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom, the prayer that we Jews pray in our time of distress is from the book of Psalms of King David, chapter 20, when we say, may the Lord, through the divine name of Havayah, answer you on the day of distress. May the name of God of Jacob fortify you. And we're learning the discourse of the previous Rabbi, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. Here's a picture of him about how he about what this means. Why are we doing this? What is the significance of this particular prayer, and why is what does it actually mean? I just posted the book itself into the comment section for our YouTube viewers, and today we're talking about we're trying to understand why it is that we're turning to God to solve our problems. Remember, in the days for 1800 years, the Jewish sages were scoffed at for turning to God to solve problems. Since the days of Aristotle, 2,000 years ago, until 100 years ago, Aristotle was considered the gold standard. Remember, Aristotle believed in God, but he also believed that the world, like God, was forever. And therefore, he believed that God had no ability to control the world. So why are you talking to God about the world? That's what science believed. Until 100 years ago, the sages were scoffed, were mocked, were scorned at for being primitive and backward, and so on and so forth. But the sages stood their ground. Judaism never changed. Judaism never buckled. The sages stood their ground. So then, what then happened was that about 100 years ago is that the scientists came up with the Big Bang Theory, which today is considered the gold standard. And now what that effectively means is a rejection of Aristotle, and it means that the world does have a beginning. What began it? We don't know. We're not sure. But what we do know is that the world has a beginning. And since God is forever and the world is not forever, just think about that for a second scientifically. If the world is limited, then something must have come before it. I think even science will agree to that, because the laws of logic will force you to conclude that something can't just become. Something had to come before it. Now, scientists will tell you, we don't know. Fine. They're being honest. They're saying we don't know what came beforehand. But there has to be something before it. Call it energy, call it force, call it God, call it the creator, call whatever you want. But essentially, that force is the force that we turn to not only create the world, but also to maintain the world. Remember, we've also learned about the doctrine of perpetual creation, which means that an entity cannot just be. The nature of everything is to return back to its natural state of being. So if you take a rock and you throw it up in the sky, it wants to go back down to rest. It wants to go to a state of rest. If you have something which does not exist and you turn it into existence, you create it, then it wants to return to a state of non-existence. And the only reason why it continues to defy its natural state, the only reason why it continues to exist when its natural state is to not exist, is because there's an external force, which is maintaining the status quo, and that is God's creative energy, which we Jewish mysticism teaches us is the doctrine of perpetual creation, how God continues to create the world at every single moment in time. So you have two forces at play. You have God's creative force, and then you have God's maintenance force, right? It's not enough just to build the building. You got to maintain the building, right? To build the business, you got to maintain the business, right? So you got to have a plan. And that's what's going on over here, is while we're turning to God in the time of our distress. When you look at what's going on in the world today, who would have thought that Iran would be under the control of Israel? In other words, who would have thought that Israel would be able to dominate the skies of Iran, right? In such a short amount of time? Who would have thought, right? It's really interesting. I've been saying this for years, and I wonder how you feel about this. I've been saying that there's no such thing as evil. I've been saying that the Torah teaches us, no evil descends from above. Because there's only two kinds of good. There's revealed good, which we're familiar with, and then there's hidden good. And if it's not good, it means that it's not good yet. Because everything will be good in the end. If it's not good, it's not the end. Now let's take a look at October 7th. Think about this. For 600 days, it was hard for me to refer to the day as Simchas Torah. It was hard for me to refer to. I would call it October 7th. Because Simchas Torah, well, how is it Simchas Torah? It was not Simcha exactly. This is a disaster. Simcha means joy. This is a disaster. Like what on earth are we doing here? What on earth are we doing here? How could this? They stole Simchas Torah from us. But if you look at it in retrospect now, Sinwar made a gamble by initiating the attacks of October 7th, the massacres of Simchas Torah. He brought down the house of the paper tiger. He brought down not only Hamas and Hezbollah, but even Iran, the head of the octopus. When you look at it in retrospect, and God willing, Iran should fall entirely. God willing, and they will, right? Just like they fell in the Purim story. But when you think about it in retrospect, you remember Moses asked of God, show me your face. Give me a secret. Help me understand you. Give me the answer to theodicy, to answer the paradox of a good God with a bad world, with an evil reality. And God says to Moses, you won't be able to see my face, but you'll be able to see my back. A metaphor. The Chassam Sofer explains it's a metaphor, that you won't be able to understand things in real time, but you will be able to see them sometimes in retrospect. You won't be able to see clearly through the windscreen, but you will sometimes be able to see through the rearview mirror. Oh, it's not called a windshield. A windshield. Shield. It's called a windshield. The Americans, they call it a windshield. Screen. Okay, we call it a windscreen. Sorry about that. All right. So when you look back at October 7th, and you think about the 1,200 plus souls who died that day, and the 250 or so hostages, and the 53 hostages who are still languishing in Gaza dungeons, some alive, some dead. Could it be that this was the bad that led to the ultimate good? For 25 years, Israel has been living in the looming shadow of a nuclear attack. News is breaking now that Israel had clear intelligence that Iran was moving unusual movements. They were beginning to launch a nuclear weapon. I don't understand exactly how that works, but have you heard of the same thing?
Well, first you have to weaponize.
Look, I'm not a nuclear scientist. I don't really understand what exactly the difference in uranium and Fordo and Natanz.
Ballistic missile.
Whatever they were doing, they were preparing. You're a businessman. You probably understand this better.
But a bomber.
We made missiles.
Yeah. So the idea is that Israel saw that Iran was preparing to launch a nuclear weapon, and that's why they came in. This is how bad things were. And that Israel had intelligence that Iran's plan was to entirely, God forbid, annihilate Israel, and to wait several decades until the nuclear fallout would dissipate, and then populate the place with Arabs. Right? This is just the kind of demented plan, the kind of demented plan that they had. But could it be that October 7th, in retrospect, was all part of the divine plan, in ways that we don't understand, folks? Yeah, because we can't condone the death of even one person, right? One person's death is a tragedy, but at least to be able to understand in the bigger picture that, like God tells us in the Torah, and He never tells us that it's going to be good without any challenges. He tells us it's going to be difficult, but at the end of the day, it's going to be good. That's the consistent theme in Torah. Right? I'm going to give you challenges to teach you lessons, to make you stronger, but ultimately you'll land on your feet. This is what God tells Abraham.
Just a matter of the price you pay.
Yeah, the price you pay, right? And nothing comes free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So on the contrary, the Torah tells us the fum tzara agra, according to the war, according to the pain is the reward.
The greater the pain, the greater the reward.
Right. So the greater you fall, the higher you rise. October 7th leads us to, the more intense the darkness, the more intense is the subsequent light. Right? So, what?
Well, I'm just saying on October 7th, it's one person's pain for another person's
gain.
Right.
Look, and this is not something which we can possibly understand. Remember, this is divine justice, and I see the Karya here is upset. Of course, it could be better without so many dead on October 7th. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, God is infinite, and we are finite, and we have to recognize the fact that we cannot understand. But yet, what we do is that we turn to God in prayer. and we say, God, listen, we're asking for a divine intervention. We are asking for God's assistance to bring an amicable and fast end. We are not mere spectators in this arena. We are players on the field, and we're called upon to pray to God. How should you pray to God? I encourage you to go to jewishgardens.com/pray. That's jewishgardens.com/pray. You'll find several selected Psalms over there that you can read every single day. Print them out and read them, or put them on your phone on the home screen so that you have them available. And every time you read it, you hear bad news or something anxiety-inducing from Israel or Iran or from I don't know where, or maybe in your personal life. You should read the Psalm. It's in Hebrew, it's in English. It's available. You should read the Psalm. You should pray to God. But today we're learning about this notion of turning to God to answer you in the time of your distress. But in order to be able to understand this prayer, which references the name of God, the four-letter name of God, the Yud Kei Vav Kei name of God, may the Lord, through the divine name of Havaya, answer you on the day of your distress. We have to understand who it is that we're talking to. Who is Havaya? Why does God have at least two names that we're going to be discussing in this discourse? There's Elohim and there's Havaya, right? What's the difference between these two different names? And why are we referring to God in our prayer? Why are we referring to God in our prayer by the name of Havaya? That's the question, right? This is what's going on over here. So let's try to understand. In order to understand this, we're on page 261 in the book, and if you're looking at the link that I sent, it's the beginning. We're talking about the fact that the divine energy not only creates the world, but it sustains the world as well. We're talking about the fact that God creates and maintains not only the physical beings, but also the spiritual beings. What we're going to learn about today is that there's natural and there's supernatural divine energies. There's God, the way he provides for our natural existence. And then there's God, the way he provides for our supernatural existence. We're going to learn that, generally speaking, the physical parts of our lives are natural, and the spiritual parts of our lives are supernatural, all of which are under the umbrella of divine intervention, divine maintenance, divine creation, all of that. There's no part of our lives that are void from God. Because remember, before the world was created, there was nothing. There was no people, there was no consciousness, there was nothing. The only thing that existed is Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzur Nivra, the master of the universe who ruled before anything was created. That's it. There was only God. There was only God. God is one. And God manifests and created the world in every single thing that it encompasses, right? I mean, think about yourself for a moment. You know, some people tell me they don't think they have a soul. And I tell them, of course you have a soul. Your physical body, your corpus, the corpse is your physical. And your soul is the spiritual parts of you. What is the spiritual parts of you? It's the life inside of you. In Latin, the word for soul is anima, which is like animation or animated, right? It means life. The life in the corpse is the soul. And that includes the wisdom. That includes the emotions. All of that includes the ambitions. It includes the aspirations. It includes the desires. It includes pleasure. All of that is something that your corpse cannot experience. A corpse is just a physical being. So within us, we have both physical and spiritual. It's like in your phone. You got the physical phone, and then you got, the Verizon, the AT&T cellular network, right? You got the data. The data doesn't exist on a dead phone, right? If the phone is dead, it's not charged, or it's not connected to the network, it's useless, right? So you've got the physical component, and you have the spiritual component. Every single thing in this world has got a physical and a spiritual. And what we're about to say is that the physical elements in our lives are controlled by God's natural creative energy, which we'll discuss further. And the spiritual parts of our lives are controlled by God's supernatural energy. They're just two different modes. You know what I mean? It's like in your car. You have a drive and a reverse, right? You have drive and reverse. It's the same engine, just this sometimes going forward, sometimes it's going backward. Right? It's like, sometimes I'm in weekday mode, sometimes I'm in Shabbat mode, right? Sometimes I'm in work mode, sometimes I'm in family mode, right? It's different modes. Sometimes I'm being nice, sometimes I'm being strict, right? Sometimes I'm being silent, sometimes I'm being loud. We have these different energies which we can manifest. So too God manifests in multiple different energies. Sometimes God manifests in a spiritual existence through a supernatural energy, and sometimes God manifests a physical existence through a natural energy. Now, what the Rebbe is about to explain is that the angels are also part physical and part spiritual. Now, that's really interesting. We often think of angels. We're like, if angels exist, then angels are only spiritual. What are angels?
God's messengers.
That's right. Angels are messengers. The Hebrew word for angels is a malach. A malach means a messenger. That's it. They're like, atheists like to mock religion by saying that religious people believe in angels. Ha 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 ha. Right? You know that you're dealing with. That the atheists are in trouble when they get emotional about the facts. This is very, very important to understand this. Let me just finish that point. Hold on a second. Let me just finish this point. When you're talking to a scientist, an alleged scientist, right? And the alleged scientist begins to attack you emotionally, now you know he's cornered and he's out of options. Because if the scientist actually had a real way to argue with you, what would he do?
Facts.
He'd use the facts, of course. The fact that he's making fun of you, the fact that he's mocking you, tells you that he's out of facts. He doesn't have a fact to argue with, right? And that's why you often find, even when it comes to politics, it's very interesting when you have debates with your friends, your family members in politics. As long as you're discussing rational conversation, it's fine. It's, you think this way, I think this way, and maybe this, maybe that. But then they suddenly, at one point, you'll notice in the conversation, it suddenly takes an exit. It just takes an exit off the highway, and it's like, well, I cannot believe that you would believe that.
Right.
And you're like, what just happened? Like, I thought we were having a rational conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I raised my voice, but that's how they do it. They shout at you, and they're like, well, I don't want to ever talk to you ever again. And you're like, what just happened? You had a tantrum? Like what just happened? Right? Because they're exasperated.
Yeah.
Now, we can discuss the facts, maybe more taxes, less taxes, Social Security this way, Social Security that way, foreign policy, right? But if you can say, can't believe that my father will support Donald Trump. You're evil, Dad. Like, that's all emotional, right? That's entirely emotional. And it shows you that they're out of ammunition. So they're just trying to, if they can't attack the argument, they'll try to attack the person behind the argument and say you're a bad person. So the same thing over here when the atheists will sometimes say that the religious people believe in angels. That's such a ridiculous accusation. Like, what's wrong with believing in angels? Do you believe in FedEx people? No, you don't believe in FedEx people? Why wouldn't you believe in FedEx people? No, I only believe in Jeff Bezos. Only Jeff Bezos I believe in. I don't believe in UPS. I don't believe in FedEx. It's ridiculous. Like, Jeff Bezos sends you packages through UPS or whatever, Amazon delivery service, whatever, right? So in much the same way, God communicates with us. God sort of sends us messages through angels. That's what these angels are. Now, these angels many times are spiritual, but sometimes they're physical. For example, in the account in Genesis, when Abraham was welcoming his guests, and it was a very hot day, and the whole story, but God didn't want to make him feel bad, so God sent him 3 angels. And they were there in physical form, and Abraham thought they were human, so he fed them, right? Because they looked like they were physical. There are physical angels in our lives. Angels are not limited to being spiritual beings. Angels absolutely can be physical beings. They can be spiritual. They can be physical. We learned this just yesterday, I think, right? We learned about the fallen angels of this week's Torah portion, Parshas Shlach. When God sends messengers, Moses sends messengers into the land of Israel, and they talk about the fallen angels that they saw there. What does it mean, fallen angels? We spoke about it just yesterday. Fallen angels are angels that complain to God that people are bad, that people are corrupt. So God says, let's see how you guys are going to do.
How do we
and then God sends the angels down to this physical world, and they became more corrupt than people. What?
If the angel is physical, are we able to recognize who's an angel?
Can you recognize an angel? Interesting. It's an interesting question. I don't know. I got to tell you, I had an amazing encounter with an angel. I was telling my kids about it Friday night. It was like amazing. Sorry, I meant to get back. Do you want to tell me what you said? They're invoices?
Yeah.
Invoices.
Invoice. In other words, they're sent down as a messenger, an invoice to the people.
Not like a demand for payment invoice. Not like that.
No, not.
You mean envoy?
Envoys, not invoice. Envoys, yeah. Okay. I thought about invoicing. I thought we were going to QuickBooks here. Okay. All right. Good.
Very
So, all right.
necessary.
So let me tell you a story. I didn't have a story with an angel. Listen to my story with an angel. You tell me if this is an angel. I'm in Japan 20. The year was, I graduated rabbinical school in 2002? Or 2003. I think it was 2002 I graduated rabbinical school. Yeah, because I got married in 2004. So this would have been in 2003, 22 years ago. I'm in Japan, and there with a friend for Pesach of 2003. Instead of going home to South Africa, we went through Japan. We went to Japan for Pesach, from Australia. Okay, we were in Melbourne, Australia. Flew through Singapore. At that time, there was this really weird thing going on in Singapore where people were wearing masks, face masks, because there was something called SARS, S-A-R-S. You remember SARS?
Yeah.
And we were like, it was such a weird thing. Like people were, the flights were empty. There was some sort of a bird flu. I don't even know what it was. But of course, we all got, whatever. Linda, listen to my story. You tell me if you think there's guardian angels. Anyways, so there I am. I'm in Japan. And Japan is a very, very weird place where people are very secretive, and you're not allowed to know where people live. They deliberately make it, at least where I was in Kobe and Osaka, they do it in a way, it's not like you have a street address like 523 Maplewood Lane, right? It doesn't say that. It's like 523, and the street is 5522187, and then the neighborhood is 2178234. So you have like a whole number, which is like basically an address. You got to figure out where the home address ends, where the street address ends, and where the zip code ends. It's crazy, and it's not like it's organized because it's just numbers everywhere. So it looks like an HTML map, not like a city map. So our job was to deliver matzahs to the various Jews that were on a database that lived in that area. We bring in matzah before Pesach, shmura matzah, right? As is the Rebbe's campaign to make sure that all Jews, wherever they are, able to have shmura matzah for their seder. So we're like feeling pretty dejected. We're feeling dejected because we're standing there on the main road in Japan, and we're trying to read this map, which thankfully had some English on it, and we couldn't tell up from down, right from left. We didn't know where we were. And we're trying to read this map, and there's a bunch of people around us looking at the map. And suddenly I hear a voice behind me say, "Avo suchtu," which in perfect Yiddish means, "What are you looking for?" So I turn back and I look around, and I just see some Japanese people looking at me. So I'm like, I must have been hallucinating. So I go back to my map and I carry on looking at the map, trying to figure out where we are. Again, ich kann dir helfen, avo suchtu, in perfect Yiddish. I can help you. What are you looking for? So I look around a second time. I'm like, I see this Japanese guy looking at me. He must have been in his 40s. He was looking at me. Jet black hair. The eyes, the Japanese eyes, like really a real strong Japanese look. And I didn't know how to respond to him because he clearly was only going to respond in Yiddish to a Japanese person. Do I speak Japanese, which I don't? English, I think I blurted out in English. I'm like, did you just say something to me? And he responds, he just talks to me in Yiddish. He says something like, I can help you if you're lost, and I'm from here, and whatever. We get into conversation. Turns out this guy, his name is Tsuguya. He just recently returned from Jerusalem, Hebrew University, where he is a professor of linguistics, who specializes in 11 languages, one of which is Hebrew, and one maybe Yiddish. Yiddish for sure was one of them. So he said, "Look, I'm here on whatever. I'm home for a while. I can help you." And he spent the next 3 or 4 days until Pesach helping us find all of our places. And I asked you a question. What are the odds? How many people live in Japan? I think it's 40 million, 50 million. I don't know. There's many millions of people living in Japan.
Yeah.
How many of these people speak Japanese? Speak Yiddish, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right.
How many Japanese speak Yiddish? I don't know. If there's one, I think that's a lot. And we found the guy at the same time as we were scratching our heads, feeling very dejected, considering aborting the mission. What? Maybe he found me. But could he have been an angel? I don't know. Could he have been an angel? I never heard of the guy again. Never called me out. I don't think I ever got his number. He kind of disappeared. And I don't know what happened. I mean, this is a true story. I wish I had a picture. It was 2003. We didn't even have an iPhone. Can you imagine? Can you imagine life without the iPhone, Mark? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
What were we doing with that free time? How did we keep ourselves busy? I mean, how did we have any friends? There wasn't even Facebook. There wasn't even, all we had was Google, I think. Google and email, I think. Maybe Gmail wasn't even invented yet. Anyways, my point is, where I'm going with this is that angels can be in physical form, they can be in spiritual form. I don't think you meant to find out. And God is very good at hiding, disguising. So I wonder if the angel himself knows that he's an angel.
Well,
The guy that found your cell phone. What? The random guy that found your cell phone.
oh, the random guy that found his cell phone.
Did the
Yeah.
kid us.
The rabbi said,
Yeah.
God, he's a messenger. He was sent to you to be able to find all these other people. You can look at it that way.
He's what?
Out of all these things, he was the messenger that was sent to you to help you find all these things.
Exactly. Of course, he was a messenger from God. What degree? He clearly was a messenger from God. Exactly. Well said, Keith. He clearly was a messenger from God. The question is, did he know that he was an angel? Was he a full-time angel? Was he a part-time angel? Was he a 1099 or was he a W-2? In other words, was he a full-time angel on payroll, or maybe he was just on a private contract, on an independent contract? Maybe he didn't even realize. Maybe that day he decided to go to the map for whatever reason. He didn't even know why.
Why does it matter if he was an independent?
Exactly. Maybe it was. Who cares? There's angels in our lives, and that's what matters. What?
No, I'm saying,
All right. So let's read that. You're about to say something.
no, I'm saying for some reason, he was in that space at that time. Something brought him there. Maybe it was, Hashem brought him.
There are no
So,
coincidences.
yeah, there are no coincidences.
Anna likes my analogy of 1099 and W-2. She's an underwriter. I don't know what kind of taxes he can declare on his on the work you collect overtime for for working for God on 1099. Anyways, let's learn this idea in the text over here. Okay, so I'm in the text, page 261 if you have the book, or in the beginning of the text that I posted at the beginning of this chat. And let's take a look. Let's just read the first paragraph. Okay, divine energy creates and vivifies both the lower world with all of its creatures and the higher worlds containing souls and angels. We spoke about that in the lesson 1 of this series. It does so in 2 ways, providing you the physical or spiritual life. We spoke about that in lesson 2 of the series. Now, these 2 life forces, spiritual and physical, are known as the natural and the supernatural. The physical element of all corporal beings, both on land and sea, from the coarsest rocks to the most refined brain matter. I mean, coarse rocks are dense, and refined brain matter is not dense. What's the opposite of dense? Is
Porous.
Yeah, but it's yeah, okay. All fall under the heading of material hosts of physical beings and are within the realm of the natural. This is also true of the clouds. Clouds are physical, right? And the other denizens of the sky. Right? As well as angels, 10 categories of which are enumerated by Maimonides. The physical aspects of these heavenly hosts are also a part of the natural world. In other words, the physical part of everything is subject to the natural governance of God. Even the physical part of the heavens, even the physical parts of the angels. You know, Maimonides tells us in the chapter reference here in footnote 2. Maimonides tells us that the angels, he says that let me just get the book. Maimonides tells us that the planets are physical angels. This is cool stuff, guys. Check this out. I'm going to read it to you in the book of Maimonides here. Check this out. Second. So this is the beginning of Maimonides, the Magnus Opus, his Encyclopedia of the Torah. Here. Okay. Okay. So in chapter 3, Maimonides actually talks about the
2:7.
Yeah, no, but I'm actually moving to chapter 3, where he talks. Here it is. Here it is. All the stars. This is chapter 3 of Maimonides, paragraph 9. All the stars, planets, and spheres possess soul, wisdom, and intellect. They live, stand, and recognize he who spoke and the world came into being, which means the physical earth is a clod of earth. It's not a physical, it's not a spiritual angel. But the planets, stars, and spheres are all spiritual beings, in a physical form. Each one of them, according to its greatness and level, praise and exalt their creator as the angels do. Just as they recognize God, so too they recognize themselves and recognize the angels who exist above them. So these are physical, spiritual beings, which sounds weird. Physical, spiritual. They're physical angels. The knowledge of the stars and spheres is less than that of the angels, but greater than human knowledge. Isn't that amazing? The knowledge of the planets. I mean, look at Neptune. Is that a planet or a star? We're not sure, right? We've got to talk to the Neptune Defense League about why it's being discriminated against. But or was that Uranus? I don't know.
No,
Pluto. Sorry about it. Pluto is the one that's struggling. But Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, these are physical manifestations of beings that have higher consciousness than human beings. They're alive. Isn't that amazing? An amazing concept? And that is my understanding of what the Mimer here is talking about when it says that the physical components of the heavenly hosts are also part of the natural world. But the spiritual aspects of all creatures, from the specific power of vegetative growth found in particular climes, to the loftiest spiritual forces found in souls and angels, which means the ability to grow granadilla. You know what granadilla is? My favorite fruit. It's called in America passion fruit. Right?
Yeah.
How does this seed turn into a granadilla, and this one turn into a gooseberry, and that one turns into a lemon? Right? It's the spiritual energy inside of the particular climb to the loftiest spiritual forces found in souls and angels, all come under the heading of the supernatural. As we evolve our way forward through this discourse, we'll be breaking it up, the various parts of our lives. Today we learned about angels in our lives, but we'll be breaking it up through the natural and the supernatural to understand how God plays a role in every single component of our lives and why it is that we turn to Havaya in the times of our distress. But for today, let's call it a day. All right.